They laughed at the widow when she married a simple mountain man, but he was the richest duke in England. Hello readers, welcome to this channel. Please subscribe and leave a like for us. It means the world to us. Also, share this video with your loved ones and turn on post notifications so you don't miss future videos from us. Thank you. As you do so, sit back and relax as we dive into this story. 1. The whispers in the chapel were louder than the organ music. They scratched at the stone walls and landed like tiny, sharp stones on the lace veil of Lady Eliza Hawthorne. She was getting married. Again. And that was the shocking part. At 29, a respectable widow, Eliza was marrying a man who had no place in this elite part of London. He was a simple mountain man named Thomas. Eliza stood at the altar, her silk dress feeling heavy with the weight of her ancestors and the judging eyes of society. She saw the faces of her family and friends. Mrs. Dalrymple, whose nose looked sharp enough to cut glass, was pretending to cough into her lace glove, hiding a sneer. Lord Harrington, a man who had tried to court her for her dead husband's money, looked openly bored, as if watching a play he found truly silly. Eliza's first marriage had been a cold, ill-fated match driven by her parents' demands for status. That life had left her with a title, a modest fortune, and a quiet ache in her heart. After her husband died, she was finally free, but society saw her as an object to be placed a second chance at a good, rich husband. The pressure to remarry for status had been cruel. She remembered the disastrous meeting with the scheming suitor Mr. Caldwell, who spent the whole dinner bragging about his land and hardly looked at her. It was after that, during a trip to the northern countryside, that she met Thomas. Thomas was rough around the edges in a way that made Londoners twitch. His clothes were plain, his hands were calloused from working, and he spoke slowly, using simple words that meant exactly what they said. He offered her a kind of freedom she had never known. Their courtship was made up of long walks in the woods and quiet evenings, talking by a small fire, not grand balls or formal dinners. They married for mutual respect and a peaceful connection, nothing more, nothing less. But here, in St. George's Chapel, their simple love looked like a joke. "He looks like he just climbed down from a tree," Eliza heard her cousin, Clara, whisper. "Look at those hands, they'll ruin her beautiful china." Eliza looked at Thomas. He was tall, solid, and undeniably handsome, but he looked so out of place. His dark, thick coat was clearly not tailored by a London shop. His hair was a bit too long, and his smile, when he offered it to her, was a little too wide, too honest. She took his hand. It was rough, warm, and strong. As the priest spoke the vows, Eliza felt a strange mix of defiance and relief. She knew this was a scandalous affair. Her family was horrified. But when Thomas promised to love her and protect her, his eyes, the colour of a stormy sea, held a depth that calmed her shaking heart. When the ceremony ended, the guests did not rush forward with happy wishes. They stood back, forming a barrier of judgment. Eliza felt the mockery pouring over her. She was a woman of wealth and lineage, marrying a man who was, in their eyes, beneath her, the mountain man, the joke. Thomas, sensing her tension, squeezed her hand, pulling her slightly closer. He did not look at the guests. He looked only at Eliza. "Ready to go home, Mrs. Thomas?" he asked, his voice low and steady. "Yes," she said, her voice shaky but determined, "away from all of this." As they walked down the aisle, the whispers followed them, a cruel, mocking tide. But as they stepped out of the chapel and into the cool air, Eliza realized she felt content. She had chosen peace over pressure, simplicity over status. She just wished everyone else could understand that. Her great wealth and lineage meant nothing if she wasn't truly happy. But how could she be happy when everyone was laughing at her. 2. Thomas, the man everyone believed was a humble man from the mountains, was anything but. The truth, a secret known only to Eliza, was shocking. Thomas was the Duke of Ashford. He was the heir to one of the richest estates in all of England. His family's land stretched from the coast to the Midlands, and his fortune was vast. But years ago, the suffocating demands of his title and the empty expectations of the aristocracy drove him away. He gave up his tailored suits and grand halls for the solitude of the mountains, seeking a life where his name and title meant nothing and he could be just Thomas. He had lived for years in a small, simple cabin, learning to find true meaning in hard work and quiet days. He was a duke who had chosen humility, searching for true connection away from the world of privilege. Eliza knew this, and it was why she had married him. She knew that the rough coat hid a man of deep wealth, not just in money, but in character. After the shocking wedding, they settled into their life. It was a life of simple pleasures. Their modest home, away from the hustle of London, was calm and quiet. Thomas spent his days working their small plot of land, teaching Eliza how to grow herbs and how to spot a hawk circling in the sky. Eliza began to see that Thomas was not just kind-hearted. He was surprisingly intelligent. He knew more about history and philosophy than most of the scholars she knew in London. They would spend evenings by the fire, where he would read aloud, his deep voice making even the driest books interesting. He taught her to see the beauty in simplicity, in living without the crushing burden of society's unending need for judgment. "Why chase the approval of people who only want to judge you?" he once asked, looking up from splitting wood. "Because it's what I know," Eliza confessed, watching the strong line of his back. "It's the world I was raised in. It's hard to let go of the need to fit in." "Then let it go, Eliza," he said, handing her a small axe. "Let's learn to build our own world." He showed her how to find joy in the small things, the smell of pine in the air, a quiet cup of tea after a long day, the joy of seeing a tiny seed sprout. Meanwhile, the pressure from the outside world only grew. Letters arrived daily from her brother, demanding she fix her mistake and find a way to annul the marriage. "You have shamed the family name. Do you know what Lord Harrington said at the club? They're calling him Lady Hawthorne's pet project," her brother wrote in one letter. Eliza's former friends were relentless, showing up unannounced to convince her that she was making a terrible error. "Darling, you were destined for a palace, not a cottage, Mrs." Dalrymple shrieked during an unexpected visit. "You must have a moment of madness. Admit it was a silly mistake before it's too late." Eliza's pride began to wrestle with her growing affection for Thomas. The social pressure was indeed overwhelming. She knew Thomas was a duke, but what if they revealed his identity and society only found more reasons to hate him? What if their love, built on simplicity, crumbled under the weight of his title? Thomas, however, remained steadfast and unbothered. He treated the unwelcome visitors with quiet respect, offering them tea and listening to their complaints with the calm patience of a mountain. He refused to dress up or change his manner for them. His simple, humble manner was his armor. "They cannot take away what is real," Thomas told her one evening, wiping the flour from her cheek after they had tried to bake bread. "Their opinions are just empty noise, Eliza. You must stop listening to them and start listening to your own heart." But how could she not listen? Every mocking glance, every cruel whisper chipped away at her confidence. She knew he was a duke, the richest man in England, but all she saw was the good man she loved. And all they saw was a joke. 3. One rainy evening, Thomas finally unveiled the truth of his identity to Eliza. Not the title, but the emotional struggle that came with it. "Eliza," he began, sitting close to her by the crackling fire, "when I left London, I never intended to inherit the title. The pressures were suffocating. Every breath I took was controlled by expectations: who to marry, what to say, how to manage the wealth. It felt like I was drowning in a gilded cage. He confessed that he ran away from his aristocratic life because it was empty. He found solace and meaning in the mountains, living a life on his own terms. He was Thomas, the man who worked hard and valued honesty, not the Duke of Ashford, the man bound by duty and gold. He had never sought to return to the life of privilege that awaited him until he met Eliza. "You," he said, turning to her, his stormy eyes serious. "You saw me as Thomas, not as an heir, not as a rich man. You saw the man beneath the rough coat. You accepted my simplicity, and that meant more to me than all the titles in the world." Eliza felt a wave of conflicting emotions. She loved Thomas, but the weight of his truth was heavy. The thought of his true identity coming to light terrified her, not because she would be embarrassed, but because she feared the consequences for Thomas. "If they find out you're the Duke of Ashford, they'll tear you apart," she whispered, her voice tight with fear. "They will see your years in the mountains as a weakness, an eccentricity. They'll never accept you. They'll say you're mad, or that I tricked you into marriage." She began to worry that Thomas would resent her for dragging him back into the high society world he had willingly left behind. Their peaceful life would be shattered, replaced by the very judgment and expectation he had run from. Eliza began to distance herself emotionally. Confused by her own feelings, she didn't know how to protect him or herself. She felt a deep, wrenching fear of losing the Thomas she loved to the Duke society demanded. A few days later, duty forced her to attend a high society event, a cousin's birthday party. Thomas insisted she go, but he refused to join her. "I am Thomas," he stated simply. "And Thomas does not go to parties with people who mock his wife." Eliza went alone, wearing one of her finest old dresses. The moment she entered the grand hall, she became the centre of a silent storm of cruelty. She overheard a group of ladies, all dressed in sparkling jewels, mocking her. "That dress is far too expensive to be worn by the wife of a woodsman. She must be saving money to feed that rough husband of hers. Her marriage is truly a joke." "Poor Eliza," Lord Harrington sneered to a friend. "She threw away her status for a bit of rough country air. Now she's trapped." The words were like needles. Eliza was not only hurt by their cruelty, but the mocking comments also fueled her desire to protect her husband from their judgment. She realized then that Thomas's simple life was not about escaping responsibility. It was about choosing his own happiness. And they, in their silks and jewels, were the real prisoners, trapped by their need to judge others. That night, she went home, her spirit broken, but her resolve forged. She had to do something. She had to defend her husband, the man who was both a humble mountain man and the most powerful duke in the land. The simple life was over. It was time for the Duke of Ashford to return. For Thomas, seeing the pain in Eliza's eyes after the party, realized he could not continue to hide. His flight from duty was now hurting the woman he loved. The simple life was no longer enough, not when it made his wife the subject of cruel gossip. "I made a promise to you, Eliza," Thomas said, standing tall and determined in their modest sitting room, "to love you and protect you. And I cannot protect you while hiding." He decided to confront his responsibilities head on. He would return to London, reclaim his title, and take his rightful place in society, not because he desired the wealth or power, but because he wanted to make sure Eliza was never again the subject of cruel gossip. The return to London was carefully planned. The news that the long-lost Duke of Ashford was returning sent shockwaves through the aristocracy. Rumours flew that he was crippled, insane, or utterly ruined. No one expected the man who had been the subject of Eliza's scandalous marriage to be the missing Duke. Thomas returned to London with Eliza by his side. They arrived not in a modest carriage, but in the Duke of Ashford's magnificent crested coach, pulled by 4 shining black horses. He stepped out, no longer wearing the rough mountain coat, but a perfectly tailored dark suit that emphasized his strong, formidable build. His hair was trimmed, but still a bit wild, and his simple manners were now seen as deep, quiet confidence. Society was forced to reckon with their perceptions. The outsider they had mocked was their superior, the Duke of Ashford, the richest man in England. The shock was immediate and delicious. Thomas stepped into his role as Duke with grace and determination. He spoke of his years in the mountains not as an escape, but as a journey to find purpose, revealing himself as both a nobleman and a man of deep principles. Eliza stood by his side, proud and secure in her decision. She now faced new challenges in the social spotlight, but she had her husband's unwavering support. The social climax arrived at a grand, elaborate ball held at Ashford House, the Duke's main estate. The ball was the official event where Thomas presented his wife as the Duchess. All of London society was there. Lord Harrington, Mrs. Dalrymple, and the whole crew of critics. When Thomas entered the ballroom with Eliza, all eyes were on them. The whispers were no longer cruel. They were amazed. Eliza was radiant in a shimmering sapphire gown that matched the newfound peace in her eyes. Thomas looked magnificent, yet his gaze remained fixed only on her. Thomas led Eliza to the centre of the floor for the first dance. As the music began, Eliza was dizzy with the sudden shift in atmosphere. The same people who had mocked her now watched her with envy and admiration. In a poignant moment, as they danced, Thomas pulled her close. "Look at them," he whispered into her ear. "They are silent now. They are silent because they realized the simple man they laughed at is actually the one who has everything, and you, my love, are the greatest part of that." Eliza looked over his shoulder. Mrs. Dalrymple was staring, her face pale with shock. Lord Harrington looked ill. The whispers of ridicule had transformed into a murmur of admiration. They saw a man who had chosen love over a title, and then chose to reclaim the title for the sake of that love. Eliza, now fully understanding the depth of Thomas's character, realized that true love transcends social status, wealth, and reputation. She had feared the title would ruin him, but instead, his character had elevated the title. She was the Duchess of Ashford, but more importantly, she was the wife of Thomas. 5. The final chapter began with a moment of peaceful understanding between the couple. The battle was won, but the true work of building a life had just begun. They sat on the terrace of Ashford House, overlooking a vast, beautiful garden that stretched for miles. Eliza, now the Duchess, had learned to embrace her own worth. She had shed the fear of societal judgment, realizing that her happiness came from within, not from the approval of others. "I was so afraid you would hate me for bringing you back to this," Eliza said, gesturing to the huge estate. "To the high society you escaped." Thomas took her hand. "Never, Eliza. I fled this life because I hadn't found what mattered. You gave me that. Now I use this title and this wealth to protect and honour what we found. This life is only empty if we choose to make it so. With you, it is full." Their life together was a mix of the mountain and the manor. They still enjoyed quiet evenings reading, but now Thomas also attended Parliament, speaking with the clear, honest voice he had used in the mountains. He was an influential duke, a man of deep principles, respected for his honesty. In a final, powerful twist, Thomas used his immense wealth and influence to benefit the community. He opened schools for the children of his tenants and built medical clinics, showing that he was not just a rich duke, but a man who wanted to make a real difference. Eliza, now his partner in all things, helped him manage his philanthropic work. She was no longer a silent widow. She was an active duchess, using her status to bring about positive change. Together, they hosted a charity event, the final test of their standing. The ballroom was filled, not just with aristocrats, but with the people Thomas had helped, teachers, doctors, and community leaders. When Thomas gave a toast, he held Eliza's hand high. "I left this world seeking a life of meaning. I found it, not in solitude, but in the heart of a brave woman who chose love over status. Thank you, my Duchess, for showing me that the richest man in England is not defined by his gold, but by the true wealth of his partnership." They were greeted with an overwhelming wave of admiration, not derision. The whispers about their marriage had turned into stories of inspiration, proving that sometimes the greatest wealth is not in titles or gold, but in the richness of a genuine, loving partnership. Eliza and Thomas, stronger than ever, faced the future with a sense of fulfillment. They were no longer bound by the constraints of society's expectations. They had built a life together based on mutual respect, love, and shared purpose. They were the Duke and Duchess of Ashford, but they were also just Eliza and Thomas, two people who had found each other when they least expected it. The laughter had stopped, replaced by a deep and lasting respect. They had traded a scandalous joke for an inspiring truth. Thank you for staying with us until the very end of this emotional journey. If this story touched your heart, we invite you to subscribe, like, comment, and share. Your support helps us continue creating more stories of love, redemption, and second chances that matter. At the end of this video, you'll see a suggestion for another of our romantic stories. Click and discover more beautiful tales of courage and connection. With all our gratitude, Duke Story.